not to sit right afterwards, just to have, not sit for, let me rephrase that, not sit for long periods of time right afterwards, just to make sure that the tissues heal and whatnot. But one of the things, especially while you're in the hospital after you've had the surgery, is getting up and walking, just for good blood flow, getting the muscles activated again, but also preventing blood clots in the legs or things like that may happen from just being laid up in the bed after you have a surgery. So they are educating patients and physical therapists that are in the inpatient rehab to kind of get these patients up and walking, get them kind of walking up and down the hallway, different bed mobility, so kind of rolling around in bed, making sure they can do that before they get discharged and go home. Because currently, the more standard procedure right now is that they're taught by the surgeon how to do different things, and then they're sent home, and then they have follow-up every couple of months or so. And so what we're trying to do right now in the physical therapy community is advocate for these services for these people, because it's quite the underserved community, especially for this type of surgery and this type of dysfunction and whatnot with the pelvic floor that may happen from the surgery. And just getting them to have, sex that actually feels good, is not painful, and actually being able to have an orgasm again and not leaking urine or feces while they're doing their day-to-day lives, and being able to get back to what they were doing prior to this gender-affirming surgery.
Hey, talk about popping a cherry. Jeez. But anyways.
Yep.
But something has to be said about this also, but because it's a very specific surgery. It's a very small community too, because what percentage is the trans community in the whole world? It's not even in the double digits or anything, right? Is that around this?
I cannot confirm nor deny. I've not seen.
Yeah, okay. Don't quote me, folks. Anyways, but this surgery has to run pretty high in the financial department too, right?
It is, which is why a lot of folk don't do it.
I mean, no, it's a high risk surgery, and also it just costs a lot of money.
Exactly.
Before we move on too much, can you give me the compact explanation of the opposite surgery?
Sure. So for female to male, there's a phalloplasty. So it's a little different. It's a little bit more involved than a vaginoplasty. Surgeons have to take a skin graft, typically from your forearm. It can come from other places. There's some research showing that it comes from maybe the gluteal folds, which is essentially your butt crack, the front of the hip, the side of the leg. It really depends on the patient and kind of their skin integrity in those particular parts of the body. But they take the skin graft. They do a little bit of a roll for the new urethra, which is the tube that urine comes out of. And they do a bigger fold that's supposed to be that neophallus. And so they kind of mold it into what is typically the average male-sized penis, and then kind of go from there. So
we don't talk about average nail-sized penises on this show at all. I'm kidding.
Only the larger sizes.
Yeah. Only the huge ones, the tiny
only
ones.
The good sizes, right?
Exactly. But I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Go on.
Oh, you're fine. So they typically let that heal a little bit, and then depending on the patient, they may put in an erectile prosthesis, so that way they can have an erect penis.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little different. They do try to spare that nerve to the clitoris, and they also try to spare some of those nerves and veins in that skin graft that they do as well, just so they can have a sensate penis. But professionally and kind of anecdotally, I haven't seen a lot of those. A lot of trans men kind of just keep with the clitoris that they currently have and just use kind of almost like a penis pump to make it larger and kind of go from there. Just because the surgery is so involved, and
well, honestly,
the outcomes.
I was wondering this, like if some of a trans man, was like, yo, like I want you to give me like a huge penis, and I feel like a doctor would be like, yo, that'd take a lot of work, and honestly, even if we could make it, like it'd be a miracle if you get the thing hard anyway.
Yeah, and that's a big kind of negative for that surgery as well, is that sometimes it's not very aesthetically pleasing. The way that the scarring heals and the way everything heals, the forearm and wherever they get the skin graft, rather, sometimes that can not heal very well. And so you've got a very large scar there, which, isn't that bad. But the neopenis may not heal very well either. And so you might have some interesting scar tissue there. So sometimes it's not very aesthetically pleasing for the owner or the receiving partner.
Ah, gotcha.
Interesting.
Yeah, good to know. I didn't know all that. This is good. This is great to have you. But I don't want to skip back too hard. But but this surgery is it's up in the thousands and all that area, right?
It's getting a little better in terms of insurance paying for it, but it is very, very pricey, which again is reasons why a lot of individuals don't even pursue it, because it's so expensive.
It's expensive. I think, somebody threw this word at me the other day called transmedicalist, which is like kind of I think the way they described it was like kind of a dying breed, not a dying breed, but just kind of an older, it's kind of a different generation of trans, I guess. I guess there was a point where like, you weren't considered fully trans until you fully transitioned, but now a lot of people keep their parts, and rightfully so, because the money aspects, what was I gonna say? I mean, first of all, like they've been taking a lot, because a lot of people start taking hormones so early now. Not so early, but like it's more widely accepted, and so a lot of people keep their parts too. And I remember, actually, you know what? I'll say this. I brought up the other podcast like a long time ago, but I went to school. I don't know if you know this gal, but her name's Bailey J. Anybody?
So,
never heard of her.
Bailey J is a trans porn star I went to middle school with. She's a girl now.
Wow.
Yeah. Still has her parts, and I think she said in an interview, I like this. I always like this, but she said, because they asked her, why didn't you fully transition? And I think it's a personal choice for anybody why they do anything what they do. I don't know whether it's with their body parts, with their lives, or with their career, or whatever they want to do. But I thought the answer that she gave was pretty awesome. She said, I mean, like if I fully transitioned, I was fully a woman, then I'd be, I mean, because she's a hot chick, but she's like, I think I'd be in the ranks of just like a bunch of women that are already, I'd rather be the hottest chick with a dick than a kind of hot chick amongst all these other women. And that always stood out to me. So I think it's more widely accepted to keep the parts and everything. And it's probably like you said, like all these risks are coming up. Like I can definitely, if I keep my parts, I can definitely have an orgasm. If I keep my parts, I don't have to worry. I don't have to pay this money. I don't have to put these risks in. So, yeah. And I think in the community, like too, because there's still people who didn't even take hormones, right? And but they're like, I'm trans and I'm da 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 and I was gonna make a point. I was right on the tip of the tongue. Anyways, but I think things are expanding more. That's what I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more in between than what we initially thought were there. A lot of people that, it kind of depends on where they're at in their life. And which also, requires a little bit of education on the provider's part too, because we need to, as providers, understand some people don't want to refer to their parts as, the names, anatomical names that we're given at birth. Some people don't want to refer to it as a vagina. Perhaps that's going to be a front hole. Some people don't want to refer to it as a penis. So you've got to also meet the patient where they're at as well.
Right. So, like, in terms of, like, pelvic physical therapy and everything, and in that field, what's the youngest and oldest patient you've kind of encountered? Not kind of, but
so
you've encountered.
Typically, we can see pediatrics, which is going to be that kind of infant age all the way up to 18. Typically, we do not do an internal assessment at all if they are still a virgin or if they're under a certain age. And that's just professionally, and it really, it really is not necessary at some point for that young. But it doesn't, the age part past that doesn't really matter. So we can see patients up to, 90, 100, whatever they may have. But it's a lot of getting consent, getting verbal consent, getting written consent while you're doing it, and before and after, and just making sure the patient is there. So a lot of times, more often than not, in general, but especially in the transgender community, there's a lot of folk that are abused. And so that sexual trauma and that traumatic event that they've had can play a huge part in your assessment. And so you have to make sure that patient is there in the room and not spacing out and trying to dissociate from their body while you're performing an assessment. And that is a huge part of what we do, is understanding someone's experience and making sure that you can get all the information that you can while you're also understanding that they may not want you to do this because they've had a shitload of sexual trauma and this is going to bring everything back.
Yeah. Oh, geez, yeah. Well,
this is like, you play a more important role than people have probably ever even known. I feel like this will be really enlightening.
It's good.
Because until I had our initial conversation, I never thought about that aspect. Even when it came to the top surgery, when you said learning to really move your arms right again, and the skin being tighter and everything like that.
Yep. Physical therapy is not specifically for that bottom surgery, and a lot of trans male people do that binding. And sometimes a lot of that education goes towards their binding techniques. Are they binding too tight? There are a lot of good nerves that are around that armpit area that you're trying to bind that you are potentially pressing on. So are you binding too tight? Are you letting your skin breathe? Especially during right now that it's 1,000,000 degrees outside. But also, if you are having that top surgery and getting the mastectomy, do you have good skin extensibility that you can raise up overhead to reach into a cabinet pre and post after you have that surgery? And, are you having that good skin extensibility that you can put on clothes and do all that other stuff? So there's a lot that goes into things that a lot of folks don't think about.
100%. So in the physical therapy, so I just want to ask, if you were to tell any parents that have potentially or just have trans children and how to support them before 18, and they're a little confused about how to fucking approach that, what'd you say to them?
I would say educate yourself.
Educate.
Go and read articles, read experiences from other potential people that may be that same age as your child or your neighbor, and figure out how you can be an advocate for that person. listen to what they're saying and meet them where they're at.